that the biggest thing that happened here is that work changed from the home and from what we'll talk about maybe in another episode, the family economy. That is that the home was the center for how they made their money and their living. And they may have done that by a multitude of things, like selling goods that they produced, selling meat, selling vegetables, spinning wool, whatever the case may be. They did it together as a family. When the Industrial Revolution comes in, it rips the family apart at the foundation. The father's gone, the mother's gone, and the kids are gone too. All of them are gone.
Hello and welcome to the Family Pulpit Podcast, the long-awaited Industrial Revolution. Episode, is this 7 now?
I think
6
this
or
is
7?
Don't do it.
6,
Don't do it. Do not.
7.
Ooh, the one person that listens just clicked off.
I want to say something. Before we get this episode started, never say 6, 7 in your life again, okay? Just to everybody who's watching this, like the 1.25 people.
You're putting a ban on it?
Banned.
This?
Stop.
Oh, I'm causing the
Stop.
static. Look, that was the phone again. Remember how we learned that a couple episodes ago?
That's crazy.
We are on episode 7. No. That doesn't sound right, does it?
Just sounds
Episode 8. This is episode 8. Look at us.
Deving, bro. Deving.
Hell.
Also, some might say that we have already slightly covered the Industrial Revolutions through our NFTP episodes, our Notes from the Pulpit episodes, which delve a little bit deeper into our topics. You can go check those out. They are on our main channel on YouTube. But, yep, we've got our episode summary here. We're just going to start this thing up.
So you want me to take over now? Okay, not a bad introduction. Okay, like he was saying, welcome to the Family Pulpit Podcast. This is the main show, and we have Notes from the Pulpit, which I've done several over the last couple weeks. Some related to our topics that we have ongoing here, some not so related.
Some on Charlie Kirk.
Yes,
recently.
talked about Charlie Kirk, and talked about the latest one I did just the other day was to try to help people navigate through the issue that is a hotbed right now, and that's Israel. Kind of navigating that, avoiding the ditches on both sides. But here we want to pick back up on our series that we've been doing for a while now, and really, you know what? I didn't plan for what's up. Okay,
I can just breathe out.
I thought it was a sigh.
No, I can just breathe out if I want to.
It was just a big exhale?
Yeah, sometimes I want to empty my lungs.
Okay, and then start all over?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's not a bad idea. But you know what? I didn't plan for the podcast to take these turns and directions that it's taken. So when we started, I had the idea of like, you know what? We better start in Genesis. We better do creation, and we better do image of God in order to understand AI. Remember how we kind of started? We were like, all right, what are we going to...
The first 5 or 6 episodes were just leading up to AI, and then after that we're kind of just tackling the main world topics going on.
I know, but what I mean is like when we were saying, okay, let's start a podcast, and what do we want to do? Remember we wrote down topics, and you were like, I don't know, I really want to do AI, and I was like, okay, we'll do AI. But then I felt like we couldn't just jump into AI. Like we had to provide a background to understand creation and then man's role as image of God, and then it led into work. And that's where I'd never even thought of it. I'd never even considered before this work worship concept. That the fact that work and worship were tied together originally in the garden, and that when God assigned work to man, that work was ultimately his worship, his way of glorifying God. And then because of the fall, that relationship gets, I don't want to say destroyed, but extremely distorted, because now you have frustration that comes in the form of the curse, right? So all of that... Then working through that leads to I wanted to think more about how work came to be known today. Like, how did we get away from this work worship concept? Yeah. And then that led me to kind of do a little bit of research and digging and come up with 4 main movements or shifts in history. The first one we talked about, you know what? The one we did last time in episode 7, the Platonic influence on the institutional church. That isn't so much the main movement as it is the undercurrent, as it is like the foundation all through history. And in that episode, you can go back and listen. We focus on Plato and we mention Aristotle, but really we don't want to ignore the influence that Aristotle would have had as well. And we're talking about the way that they viewed the material versus the immaterial. And that kind of leads to, you talked about it too, the blue collar versus white collar.
Yeah.
What's up?
I also just had a genius idea. What if in all of our... Come on, you had to. You had to. What if in all of our videos we have like a new word or like a definition that we introduce? Like not, it doesn't
a
even
word
have
we
to be,
invent?
No, like a dictionary word, like a big word that not a
The word of the day.
word of the day, word of the
Are
week.
we a PBS show now?
Word of the week, word of the week, blank, blank.
Okay, I don't have a word prepared today. Did you have one?
I actually do.
Why am I not surprised?
It's more of a definition. It's IoT. I actually didn't know what this is, which is why I thought of it. So it stands for information.
Scoot up there a little bit.
Internet of Things. And it means like when you have like a smart device that's not primary, like a fridge with a computer on it, Android, probably some sort of open source platform.
So the Internet of Things,
it's like
as defined by what would be called smart devices, smart homes, smart appliances.
Like an Alexa would be an Internet of Things
all
device.
of the things that connect to the internet, so that when your internet is actually hacked, they can make your refrigerator open up and start throwing milk at you. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
Which is actually better than getting like cryptojacking or something.
All right. Okay, so here's what we want to do. And I know you've already looked at that. We got it on the screen, just our little outline, but I hate to ask, did you know? Because you're going to look at that and go, yeah, I know now. Most people, I think, don't realize that there are presently 4 industrial revolutions, and that we're currently in the 4th one.
I actually didn't know that. I only thought there was one.
Get up a little bit there.
Mostly the second one I think is like most. The first and the second one are the one we kind of combine that into one.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the majority of people would do exactly what you said. They're going to look at the first industrial revolution, and the first industrial revolution. Let's just go ahead and jump in. So this is mid 1700s to the 1800s. Okay, and this is going to cover steam, coal, and mechanized agriculture. Do you know anything about inventions or developments in those time period? What do you got? What do you got?
So I think James Watt.
Okay.
And
what does he invent then?
Do you remember that guy's name? I can picture his face.
The steam engine?
I think, but I have him in a physics book, but I returned that one to the library.
Okay, well, no pressure.
But I do remember who he was. I can picture his face, but I can't. I don't know. I can't.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Listen, one of the things that I learned, and I was telling you too, is because we think of inventions today as brand new. Something I've got to think up of some sort of invention that's brand new, nobody's ever thought of before. But what was going on in the Industrial Revolution is they were modifying one another's inventions. So I can't remember off the top of my head because we didn't write these details down. But whoever it was that invented the steam engine, was that what?
So
Robert Fulton is what I'm getting at. Robert Fulton takes the steam engine and he modifies it to make the steam boat.
So I can picture the guy's face, and I may be confusing him with the guy who did the pendulum, but I think he did a steam engine.
Who what? Oh, okay.
But I can picture his face.
Anyway.
Grab a book if you want.
No, that's fine. It's all right. We'll labor through, and people can look it up on their own. But that's the main things that you have during that first industrial revolution: steam, coal, and mechanized agriculture. We'll mention that some more in just a second. But you're right. The second industrial revolution kind of just joins right in from the mid 1800s to early 1900s. That's when you have steel, railroads, electricity, and mass production. That one I think people would probably be more familiar with.
Yeah.
Especially, the docu-series, what would you call that? That would be like a dramatic documentary because it was acting but also a documentary. The one that The Men Who Built America.
Oh, I love
Listen,
that.
that is legendary. Highly recommended. The Men Who Built America was a History Channel kind of docu-series, but there were actors and stuff in it. And it covers, who did it cover? It covered people from this second industrial revolution. Vanderbilt, yeah. Rockefeller,
yeah.
The steel guy.
Oh, Ford?
No, Ford comes in later.
Henry Ford, yeah. Huh? A little later, like in the...
He's going to come... So we mentioned mass production because he's kind of the one that takes the assembly line.
Yeah. I do want to say, I think I will be very involved when we discuss the third and fourth one, because I actually want to write a book about the third one.
Carnegie. So Andrew Carnegie.
Oh, yeah.
Rockefeller. J.P. Morgan. Vanderbilt. Then you have sort of a little bit later on with electricity, you've got the battle that takes place between Tesla
and
Edison,
yeah.
and Westinghouse.
Yeah, I was gonna say there was a third guy in there.
Yeah, so that documentary is excellent. What is it?
Tesla used to work for Edison, right?
There was something like that, and they actually set him up and used propaganda to say that his electricity that he had come up with, which was DC versus the AC, they said it was dangerous and people could get killed, when that actually wasn't true.
To explain what DC and AC is quickly, AC means that alternating current means that the electricity can flow to and from the source. Direct current can only flow to.
So that's why AC can actually kill you.
Yes, AC was
and
dangerous.
DC wouldn't kill you.
No, it would not. DC is completely harmless.
They lied.
You look at, that's why when you look at 9-volt battery, you're unaffected. It just gives you a little shock.
Okay, so there's the first and second, and that's what I think people are familiar with. And what we're going to do is we're just kicking this off because I want to show you how this ultimately, once we do these first four here, how this ultimately affected work that we've come to know as, and actually how it led to a destruction of the family. So the third industrial revolution, that's mid-1900s to late 1900s. Yep. What do you got in that one?
You've got your electronics, your computing, your automation. Throughout that, I think if you can say late 1900s, for the 1900s, then you can definitely say that Linux was invented in that period. Windows, Microsoft was established. Intel
IBM,
was like the 40s.
IBM comes big time.
IBM, yeah.
You got supercomputers in the 50s, mid-50s.
Yeah. We're kind of shifting from supercomputers to better supercomputers, like super duper computers. Honestly, I think we should be making a turn towards quantum computers because they're much better, but I don't think they are.
Listen, that kind of leads into the fourth industrial revolution. This is the one that I think people don't realize, is that they don't realize we're in one now. And I was first introduced to this by trying to follow the people from the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab and Noah Yuval Harari and those sorts of guys, and they were talking about the fourth industrial revolution. And this is where you get AI. This is Ezra's word, IoT, the Internet of Things, biotechnology, knowledge-based economy.
You can almost say biotechnology is essentially transhumanism.
I think so too.
But I also thought it was like electricity from like broken down, like plants, electricity.
Okay.
Or I thought I have a definition. I don't know. I said definition. In a book that I'm reading, but I will think about that.
Okay, you think about it. And I also was reading another book. I don't necessarily recommend the author, but if you kind of want to understand where things have been and where they're going, it's called The Great Reset. So you guys might remember during COVID, people were talking about the Great Reset. That was a world economic concept that was coming up. But this book was a few years prior to that, written by Richard Florida. And in that book by Richard Florida, he discusses how these industrial revolutions have always had things that accompanied them. And they are geographical movements and people movements. So
did you know that the Great Reset is also a little thing in a Ryan Trahan video, that if he got so many such and such many donations in his video, that he would have to restart and go back to 1 penny?
I did see that.
That's
episode.
an actual thing. So go watch that video. It's hilarious.
So let's finish out setting the stage for the Industrial Revolution right here. And we've got in the research that I was doing, I had a couple different sources. I got a couple different books I'm still reading. And there are some things that led into these Industrial Revolution. And the first we got to point out that it began in Great Britain. And it began with what was called the enclosure movement. So I don't know if you knew this or not. This is actually a brilliant idea. People owned their own property, and they had like their house, and maybe they had a couple acres, and maybe they had gardens and farms of sorts where they had animals and those sorts of things. And then they had common land. So let's imagine our farm, for example, and say that we had multiple houses that would go on around the ridge, okay? And each one of them had a couple acres. But then as coming to the center of the land, there would be like a larger tract, like 50 acres, almost like spokes off of a bicycle, and then a central hub. And so that common land wasn't fenced. It would be like if you had cows and your neighbor had sheep, and your other neighbor, maybe they had chickens, not horses, because what would they provide? Well, they provide transportation, so I don't want to pick on horses. Okay. But anyway, you would share that land. And so this enclosure movement was a way where land actually started to be taken over by rich people.
So wait.
So hang on, the rich people took over the land, and they started enclosing it. And so they started fencing it off. This might be where we start to see some of those rock walls that are formed. But what happens is, rather than having land that was common among a community where they could share it and everybody got along with it, it got taken over.
Oh, so
and
it's
land became mass owned.
Honestly, this is kind of a dumb way to put it, but this is actually kind of equivalent. It's kind of like in Minecraft when you have the villagers and they have their villages and they share this little land. Their houses are close together.
Yeah.
And then when you have the actual players and their fortresses are so far apart, they're battling each other to get in.
Yeah, so what happened is, if you no longer, let's say you had 1 acre, okay, and you were dependent on this common land that you shared with 5 or 6, 8 or 10, whatever, other neighbors, okay, and that land got taken over and fenced in, and you no longer had access to it, but you raised sheep, and you depended on sheep for meat and for wool, but now you've lost access to that acreage. What do you think happens? You lose the land, and now you're dependent upon what's called wage labor. Do you know what that means? That means you've got to go now, instead of having your time, that you're not paid for your time, you're paid for your goods, i.e. your wool or your lamb meat or whatever the case may be, your beef. You're now paid for your time. You now have to go work for that guy that has the 50 acre, the 100 acre, the 200 acre pieces of land, because you can't afford your house anymore. You're dependent upon someone else. You lost yourself, your independency and your self-sufficiency. That was the enclosure movement. And that leads us into the agricultural revolution, because innovations in farming, they started looking at this enclosure movement and they started saying, look, we've got more land. We can clear this off. We can do more things with it. We can rotationally graze our animals, which isn't a terrible idea today. We can plant more things. We've got access to bigger plots, so now we need machinery. We need the plow. You know what I'm saying? Like, we need the plow. We need the tractor. All of these things start to develop, and then you get the steam engine. Well, with the steam engine, and then the revolution that's taken part in agriculture, now there's another major shift. All right. So up to this point, everybody's able to stay at their house, despite the fact you may be working for somebody else. But something massive changes. When the steam engine is developed, and you get factories that are now created that can do things that people were doing in their home, like spinning that wool, or making clothes or textiles of some sort, or any sort of production that can now be mechanized. Now the work shifts from the family home to the industrial complex, to the industry that's in a city. So this is what's going to be massive for the change in work. Okay? People are literally going to be ripped from their homes. So daddies go off to coal mines. The mommy and the children, they go off to factories. We talked about this. I was talking to you a little bit to explain how the kids would work in the factories too. This is actually a terrible situation. These people were working 16, 18 hours a day in horrible conditions. And I mean children as young as 4 or 5, right? The women are gone. The men are gone. The family is ripped apart. They come back home for a few hours a day just to go back to work after their a little bit of rest that they might get. Not only that, but once you leave your family farm, you've gotten rid of any self-sufficiency that you could have possibly had.
You're cooked.
I'm cooked?
Basically.
You are cooked because now you're dependent. And so what I was studying is that these families were living sometimes 10, 20, 30 people in a small little, what we would call today an apartment or a flat. They're just crammed in there because they can't afford anything.
I like flats, though. I like flats.
Do you know what else?
Like
the children, I read I don't have that book handy, but there's a book that I've been reading too on the Luddite movement, and the Luddites, they get a bad rap today as those like, oh, you stick your head in the sand against electronics and be a Luddite.
Do you know what that's called?
What?
The book?
The Luddites? I don't know. I can go grab it in a second if I need to. But anyway, what it pointed out in there is that there was one little girl that had some interviews from back in the 1800s or so, and the kids were beat. If they were late for work, they were beat. If they slacked off of work, they were beat. And so what happened? People wanted to leave their home because they've been kind of pinned in, literally, with this agricultural movement and the enclosure movement. And they were seeking a better lifestyle. So not everything, there's an old saying, not everything that glitters is gold. They actually thought, well, you know what, if we go work in a factory, if we go work in these mines, we're going to make more money and we'll have a better lifestyle. We'll have better living conditions. And that was false. they fell for the lie. It was actually way, way worse. Way worse.
What they had was gold.
They traded their freedom for a lie built on the prospect or thought of money. And it just wasn't true. It just didn't happen. Anything else you want to say about that? I mean, I know this is a massive topic, but I just want to press home that the biggest thing that happened here is that work changed from the home and from what we'll talk about maybe in another episode, the family economy. That is that the home was the center for how they made their money and their living. And they may have done that by a multitude of things, like selling goods that they produced, selling meat, selling vegetables, spinning wool, whatever the case may be. They did it together as a family. When the Industrial Revolution comes in, it rips the family apart at the foundation. The father's gone, the mother's gone, and the kids are gone too. All of them are gone.
And I do want to mention, I don't know if I'm giving something away for later, though. What we do have, we've replaced that today with compulsory education.
Yeah, you're right, and we don't want to. That'll be the next episode. But what they did is when unions started getting involved and they started looking at labor more closely and determining, it's not good maybe for anybody to be working 16 or 18-hour days in terrible conditions, terrible breathing conditions. Pollution is off the chain. The waters adjacent to these factories were polluted and destroyed. The air quality was terrible. In fact, if you go back and you listen to, not listen, but you read, there is a lot of literature from the same time period that is written in response to the Industrial Revolution.
Dickens's Hard Times,
yes. Dickens's David Copperfield, I believe. All of these, there's tons of authors.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
There's a lot of authors and a lot of poets that got started during this time period pointing out just how bad the living conditions were. But yes, as a result of taking a closer look at children, and then they started saying, well, you know what? No one under the age of 5. We don't want them working in coal mines or in factories. So then, no one under the age of 8. All right, no one under the age of 12. And then when you've got mommy and daddy who are off working essentially slave-like jobs. I mean, there's no other way around this. It basically was. They might not even get paid. You got to do something with the kids, and that's what Ezra had mentioned, the compulsory education. The government schooling system, mandatory government school came about because they needed something to do with the children, and the goal for them was to just create more factory workers. I mentioned that in one of the notes from the pulpit, but Industrial Revolution, man, bad news. We like to look at it today, and we think, well, look at the positives. Look at all the developments that we've had. But what we did is we traded what appears to be a better or easier life, we traded in freedom. And you got any thoughts on that? Do you remember anything from Industrial Revolution, or is there anything you want to comment on that at all?
I don't think so. But I will say, I was thinking about this. There was a David Copperfield movie we watched with the guy who plays Harry Potter in it. He was really young. I can't remember his name.
I think, let's see, so A Christmas Carol would be Dickens. And so if anybody's seen A Christmas Carol, that kind of puts you in that time period for the Industrial Revolution. So you got a lot of children that you would see on the streets, and they're just dressed kind of in rags, and the housing conditions are just not good at all. And basically it was a way for the rich to get richer. The factory owners, they're the ones who exploited the workers, took advantage of them. I don't know, man. It just revolutionized work in a way that we had not seen before. But I was looking through this, I came across a few connections that I was not expecting to make. I wondered why. I looked up to see why. Why didn't Christianity, why didn't the quote-unquote church respond to the first Industrial Revolution? Why didn't they come along and say, look, this Industrial Revolution is destroying the family, and we've got to do something about it? And do you know there was no response? Like, it was silence. It was crickets. I think that's weird, because now looking back, we can say, look, we wouldn't want a movement to come along and destroy the family. But anyway, in that same time period, you got the Great Awakenings in the first revolution. The second revolution, you start to get a little bit of response to it. This is kind of a neo-Calvinistic response from Kuyper and Bavinck, but they're still struggling. They still don't know what to do. Really, nobody's come up with a solution. And here's what I think happened. You can jump in here. You're kind of like, yeah, I'm not really interested in this part. But listen for just a second. If you have the Industrial Revolution that literally rips people from their families, from their homes, okay? The father's taken out, the mother's taken out, the kids are all taken out, okay? I would think that the way to resolve this would be for Christians during those time periods to go, hey, wait a second. God designed work worship. God created the family economy, and we need to get back to that. But they were silent. And then there became an emphasis on people just preaching, just saying, well, all we really need to do is we need to live holy. And so the social gospel comes along and it says, well, we've got a way that we can solve these things where there needs to be more equality and more equity and things need to be on even playing field. So they actually were addressing this. Meanwhile, the fundamentalists and the so-called conservatives, they weren't addressing this at all, which I think allowed this to further cement our society today. And that families just continue to be operating this way. Growing up, I had both parents that went off to work. Did you know that you didn't have that, but your sister did? Do you know where that came from? That comes from this. We've got what's called a two-income model family today. So if you've got a mother and a father in the home, which I know we're getting away from that, we only have a lot of times a mom and no one else there at all, or maybe just a grandma. But the two-income family was where the mother and father would go off to work, the kids go off to daycare, and then they start into school. Did you know? Did you know that came from the Industrial Revolution? Cat got your tongue now all of a sudden? You have nothing to say? Silence. I'd just like to note that this is the first time ever, perhaps in his life, but definitely on a podcast, where he's been quiet.
First time and forever.
So there's a couple things, and I don't want to belabor this, but I do want to point out, you got to understand how impactful the Industrial Revolution was on the family and how it changed work. So rather than being independent, rather than being self-sufficient, rather than working with your family on a multitude of different industries or trades, we might say, from, like I mentioned, from gardening to farming to raising animals to building and making things, all of these things where the dad would teach the son a trade, the mom would gather all of the children under her wings and show them and teach them different things in the home. All of that gets ruined from the Industrial Revolution, gets destroyed. Mm-hmm. There's a couple things that came about this, and we don't necessarily have to get into these details. Have you heard of Marxism?
I've heard of Karl Marx, but
so what Karl?
He's an economist.
Sort of. A philosopher as well.
He had economist thoughts, but mainly a philosopher.
Yes.
But sometimes politics, rhetoric, and also economics gets intertwined with philosophy. And culture as well.
Yes.
Because honestly, you could say philosophy would be the study of the way humans interact with the world. You could say that.
Yeah. So what Marx does,
each other.
So I'm not going to go into details in all of these things, but I'm just introducing them so people can think through them themselves and maybe start to put the dots together for themselves and go, you know what? Wait a second. The Industrial Revolution did change things. The mother wasn't meant to be taken from the home. Neither were the children. And you know what? Neither was the father. The father wasn't meant to be taken from the home either. But what Marx does is he starts to critique the exploitation of labor, which this is where we're going to lose people, which he was right to do. The fact that people were being exploited and taken advantage of and worked to death, and then his critique of that, although I'm not by any means an expert, he was right. The problem is that his solution was wrong. And so some Christians try to engage with him, and they're like, well, he's come up with secular solutions. We might like the critique, but the secular solution is wrong. Well, like I mentioned, there's no one that comes along with a helpful solution. Herman Bavinck, a little bit. Abraham Kuyper, a little bit, but this very, very minimal. And I'm going to talk about this because this point right here, I'm pointing out on the screen for you, Ez. That is where the guy that you're more familiar with comes into play. So I know everyone's going to hear this term and they're like, oh my goodness, this is social Catholic teaching. Look into a little bit of Distributism and Chesterton and Belloc, and not so much that the government owns the land and then hands it out, but an encouragement, we might say, for people to own land and return back to their house, return back to their family, and begin that self-sustenance again by having a little bit of land and a cow. Okay, this is what's called the third way. Often it's trying to be a counterpoint between both capitalism and socialism. So think for me just for a second here. I know I'm losing you a little bit. Everything that we've been talking about historically, from philosophy to economics and to now theology, it's all related. People today, they don't nearly give this stuff as much thought. Okay, they assume the status quo. They're like, well, this is just the way things are, and now we're just going to go about our business. Prior to, I'd say, the mid to early 1900s, men actually sat around and thought about these things. They thought about, how did we get here? What are we going to do about it? What can we do to change these things? The Third Way movement, which Alan Carlson has a book called Third Ways, which is a helpful overview, and he's going to point out some of the errors with distributism and how Chesterton and Belloc failed. But the way that we found our way to Alan Carlson was via a guy named Rory Groves. And Rory Groves wrote a book called Durable Trades. And in that book, what Rory does, he was an IT specialist, a programmer, and he was struggling with the fact that he left every day, left his family behind, and that the work that he was doing becomes obsolete. You know, as soon as he writes code, hint, hint, Ezra, as soon as he writes code, it becomes obsolete. And so he wanted to leave something to his kids and realize, I'm not discipling and apprenticing my children in being code makers. So what he does is he wants to essentially do what we're doing here. And he wants to go back and look and see, well, when did things change? Is this the way it's always been? And his book on durable trades, did you read that?
I flipped through it.
You flipped through it. So he has about 60 trades that he goes back and looks at prior to the Industrial Revolution, and he sees that these things have been pretty solid trades, regardless of economic conditions, regardless of things that have changed in technology. And he ranks them. And what his goal is to show that while the Industrial Revolution had destroyed the family and ripped them out of the home and basically changed our definition of work, there's a way to get back there by focusing once again on the home and the family. And so his book, Durable Trades, kind of goes through that and reestablishes what he calls, and I thought he coined this, but he didn't. This has been around for a little bit, but it's the family economy. It's the oikonomos, the house management. The way that the family itself, not that the family's starting businesses necessarily, but that they're working together as a family unit.
I was just about to say that.
What do you got to add?
Working together.
No, you should be chiming in here. I know you're fading off here. Your eyes are going cross, but you should be chiming in because you're familiar with the family economy. You're familiar with what this looks like in practice a bit. You were just out splitting firewood today. That's a family economy practice. Did you know that? Did you know that out splitting firewood and stacking it up is a family economy practice? Because one, it provides us with a service that we need. It provides us with firewood that we use to heat our home. Two, if we didn't do that work ourselves, we'd have to go pay someone to do it or pay someone to provide it for us. You see how it's related?
And three, it builds muscle.
And three, it builds a little bit of muscle, maybe. Come on.
For me, at least.
Yeah.
You already have it.
Okay, so there's been some modern critiques of distributism. You can find those online. I am not at all promoting the social Catholic doctrine, but what I am saying is that there may be something to the fact of we need to get back to the land, which would then allow us to get back to the family. Maybe one thing that one way this can be done is through a modern homesteading movement, which I'm not necessarily telling people to go get 5 acres and a cow. But if you have a home and any sort of piece of land, even a balcony, you can have that work for you. In fact, there's another book called Man of the House written by C.R. Wiley, and in there he talks about productive property. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go out and plow a field and raise, an acre worth of tobacco or something like that. But use your property that you have to work for you. That's the idea. And in that way, you're bringing that economy back to the house and back to the family. What did you got? You got something to add on this? Come on, let your brain, come on, be thinking. What do you got? You got to jump in here on something. Family economy, durable trades.
This is a multi-stage aerobic capacity test.
I don't want to hear about the fitness gram. I don't even know what that is.
It's a pacer test.
No.
It's a multi-stage aerobic capacity test that increasingly gets more difficult as it continues.
I award you no points. No. But I know I had to do the introduction there at the beginning for the Industrial Revolution, and it's helpful. It needs to be helpful. People need to think about it.
Fourth and fifth one, or the
Fourth
third
and fifth?
fourth.
Why?
Third and fourth, because those are the best ones.
I just did the third one. Yeah, we were talking about Rory Groves, and we were talking about...
That's not the third one.
What are you talking about?
That was the first one.
Oh, the shows. Is that what you mean? You want to talk about schooling? Is that what you're talking about?
No.
What do you mean?
No, you didn't just do the third and fourth Industrial Revolution.
Well, we if you want to talk about those, we certainly can.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about that. So let me go back and pull people up to speed where we are. So we set the stage with the Industrial Revolutions 1 through 4. We talked about briefly some of those Christian responses which were absent. I mean, it was actually shocking. I'm sorry, I keep hitting that microphone.
Yeah, normally it's me.
Normally it's you. It was actually shocking to go back because I'm like, where was the Christian response to this? Where was anybody standing up for the family and saying, no, stop doing this. Stop selling your soul and enslaving yourself and your family for the sake of what you think is a better quality of life. Stop doing that. Nobody did. They let it happen. And then the social gospel, like I mentioned, comes along and tries to come up with a way, but they're doing it in a way that's, in fact, unscriptural and not biblical. They start to mix their message together a little bit. But we then went through the third way. And I would encourage people to take a look at that. Just research it, look it up for yourself. Grab Alan Carlson's book called Third Ways. It's a helpful book. It's kind of a history book. It goes through a number of ways that this has happened. People have tried to find this middle path. A lot of times it's failed, but it at least gets you thinking. Like maybe there's something else going on here. All right, so let's pause there because we've already talked about Platonism a little bit. We've talked about Aristotle. Industrial revolutions, compulsory schooling, and feminism. This is how these things all link together, which we'll talk about the schooling.
Is so easy to just punch in the stomach.
It's not though, because when the Industrial Revolution happens, and I'll let you jump in a second. You can talk about some of what you know about the Industrial Revolutions. But when this happens, and the husband and the wife and the children are pulled out of the home, and the husband is making more money, and I really do think it was probably because he's doing more labor-intensive work, and then it just kind of migrated over to, well, the husband and wife are doing the same job, but they're getting paid differently. So feminism comes along and says, you know what, we deserve to make as much as the man does. That's basically what happens.
That's not false.
It's not false, but the foundation is sand. Because the argument shouldn't be, we need to have better working conditions. We need to have better working hours. We need to be making the same amount of money. The argument should have gone back to the beginning and said, what are we doing here in the first place? That's what they should have said.
The argument at all, if there would be anything related to, like, wages, so, like, if a guy works for an IT company, let's see, he gets $500 a month. And then he's got 8% interest.
Well, don't get complicated. Just give us what you're saying.
Okay, but he's got to pay back 8% all the time. But the woman, she gets $300 a month and has 10% interest.
Yeah.
They shouldn't call that feminism. If they want the woman to have $500 and 8% interest, they should call that equalism.
They do. It's equality or it's equality.
Wait a minute. I'm forming a word. Humanity. What would be the word, like, philosophical? That's something related to. What's the word for that for humanity?
For human?
Yeah.
Humanism?
No.
I'm not sure.
Humanistic equality.
Humanistic equality. Okay, I would probably buy that. But what I'm saying is that rather than trying to fight for equality in the workplace, men and women should have said, wait a second, how did we get here? Is this the best model for us? And the actual answer is no.
Niet.
The way would have been for the family to remain solidified, remain together. This, of course, led to man being the breadwinner. The model that man becomes the breadwinner and then the woman actually stays home.
I really want some bread.
And that distorts it as well. So I'm gonna let you go for a minute. What do you want to talk about for third, fourth Industrial Revolution? What do you got? Don't get too technical for us.
What I really want to do is I just want to list the most of the advancements in the fourth one.
Okay, what happened in the fourth one?
So early 2000s, we've got the invention of the smartphone, the internet. That's a big one. Minecraft in 2009, but actually released in 2011. That's also a big one. The official iPhone by Steve Jobs was 2007. Let's see, we've got new advancements in CPU and computer parts technology. We've got our first pocket PCs.
Are these dates accurate? And these things are, because we don't have these written down.
I know Minecraft 2011.
All right.
iPhone's 2007.
All right.
And then when we get into 2012, 13, 14, 15, our iPhones are getting refined, PCs are getting refined. Most of this stuff, like, we're having shifts in, like, the quality of the computers. It's becoming more common. And
cost goes down when you do that. Cost goes down.
Yeah.
Or at least it should.
Yeah.
I noticed those new iPhones were like $1,000 though. So
and I didn't mention gaming devices are kind of limited in the background here.
So
you got your PlayStations, you got your Segas. Okay. Those died down. Nintendo's, the N64 reigned in the 2000s. And then I think DS reigned.
Okay.
3DS, 2DS for people with optical conditions, and they couldn't use the 3DS.
So all of these things are part of this fourth industrial revolution, right?
Yeah.
Can you think for a second and tell me how those things you just mentioned would impact work and family?
Well, you could take calls from home.
Okay. What else?
You could,
let's think for a second. I'm serious. Let's think through this. How does that change? How do they change work?
Oh, a whole entire new line of jobs.
Okay, brilliant. Like what? Let's think for a second.
IT?
What do you got? You got a whole IT sector that comes online, right?
Just computer inventing, like
computer inventing, programming.
Help desk.
So with each one of these industrial revolutions, right? So if we're thinking for just a second, and we go back to Rory Groves' book, and we see that maybe he's come up with, 60 or so trades that existed prior to the Industrial Revolution, the first one. What actually happens is it explodes with new jobs, okay? So you've got from 60 to the first Industrial Revolution where you may have several thousand, to the second where you've got an additional 1,000, to the third and fourth where you've now got tens of thousands of new jobs that never existed before in history, ever.
And now AI is going to take all of those jobs.
And now, what do you have to
say? I will say, AI. I'm just going to mention this real quick.
Yeah.
For everybody who watched our last episode, we are now almost certain false alarm AI is not going to take over. It's a dud.
It could be. Hey, listen for just a second. Do you have something else you want to talk about for these industrial revolutions? I was going to go grab Rory Groves' book real quick because you've hit on a huge point. And I don't have the stats in front of me where he's talking about these jobs and specializations that jump out.
Okay, you can go grab that. In the meantime, I'll talk about some more advancements.
Do you have more?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So in our 2000, let's see. So we were at 2015, 2016, 17, 18, and 19. Oh, also I forgot to mention, all throughout this we've got movie advancements. Cameras are getting upgraded, so we have better optical instruments. Throughout this we've got, in 2017, 18, and 19, more upgrades with the phone, more upgrades with the PC, and now more recently, 2020, 21, 22, 23, and 25. I skipped 24, that's kind of awkward. 24 as well. We've got...
You're just throwing numbers out.
No, I'm not. But in these recent years, we've just got more upgrades. The iPhone is phenomenal. Like, there's huge upgrades.
I feel like you're being random.
I'm not being random.
I feel like maybe you are.
You've broken my heart.
Nothing broke your heart.
Aim for my heart, Ben. You can't break what's already broken.
No, you're doing a good job. You're holding it down there. But don't just, like, throw stuff at him though, bro. All right, here's what we got. Let's see. I didn't have this planned, of course, but since you brought this up, as you are nailing exactly what is the heart of this issue. So again, what he pointed out in his, we won't say it's rambling, your historical overview of the third or the fourth industrial revolution, right? Is that there are tens of thousands of new jobs that came up. Can you just roll out of bed and go get one of these jobs? What do you have to do?
You have to apply for it. You have to have experience.
Just experience?
Knowledge.
Where do you get that knowledge?
Books.
School?
Videos.
School?
No.
No school?
No.
No school. So to become a computer programmer or to become an IT specialist, you don't have to go to school. You're shaking your head no.
Oh, college. You could go to college.
That's school.
I thought you were meaning
You
compulsory
literally
education.
have to. No,
Because
it
in school,
ultimately
you've
is.
got robotics, but not really.
No, it ultimately is. You are not going to go out and get a job. There's some changes that are taking place today. Maybe they're good changes, but you were not going to go out and get a job in the late 90s, early 2000s in anything without having a college education. So what happens when you got the Industrial Revolution that explodes with these jobs is you have to educate people. You see how they're all hand in hand, and it's actually building a balloon that's going to pop here. Most people have been talking about this. I'm trying to see where this section is. Hang on a second, because I know it's in here.
Proof that I can breathe out without sign.
Quit. I'm trying to see because the amount of jobs and what... Here we go. That's a good one there too. Oh, complex. Okay, so here's what we got. Let me just read this, and we're about to wrap this show up. But this is so good. This is from, again, Durable Trades, written by Rory Groves. The foreword is by Allan C. Carlson, who I mentioned. That's how we kind of got linked up with that third way. And the publisher is Front Porch Republic Books. Okay, I've had this for maybe, I don't know. Let's see if I got a date in it. Nope. 4 or 5 years, possibly. So, in the 1600s, there were about 20 different jobs. In the 1700s, there were about 35. In the 1800s, there were about 70 different jobs. The first Industrial Revolution hits, you go to 324 jobs. The 1900s, now you're into the second Industrial Revolution, and you're heading into the third, 8,128 different jobs. Then you get to the 1950s. Now you're smack dab in the middle of the third Industrial Revolution. 17,980 jobs. By the time you get to the start of the fourth Industrial Revolution, you have 30,959 different job specializations.
I mean, from 324 to 8,128, that's like a 7,000, 804 difference.
Massive. Now you know what else you got to relate to this is that with the rise of these jobs and what's called specialization, people lose their day-to-day skills. They start to focus on one thing rather than being able to do a multitude of things. One more stat from Rory Groves' book, and then we'll be done. We'll finish this up. But I saw this. He's got a chart on page 7. It's kind of a pyramid. And the distribution of employment in the 1900s, he has at the top of this pyramid a little small triangle called quaternary. And that's where he's got research, education, and engineering. It was a very small sector, we might say. Then under that, he's got tertiary, a little bit bigger. But that's where you've got sales, healthcare, banking, and law. And in the middle of this pyramid, or triangle, you've got a secondary, and that's manufacturing, processing, construction. But then primary, built on the bottom, this whole entire thing is supported primarily by agriculture, mining, fishing, forestry, and hunting. That's 1900s.
What would forestry be defined as?
Logging, making paper, making wood products. Then by the 2010, this entire triangle or this entire pyramid is flipped upside down on its head. At the top is now the base of the triangle, and that's the quaternary, and that's huge research, education, engineering. Then the largest chunk, the tertiary chunk, the massive chunk of this whole new pyramid from 2010 is sales, healthcare, banking, and law. And then secondary, you've got manufacturing, processing, and construction. And now primary, with this little teeny tiny little portion of this now upside down triangle or pyramid, is agriculture, mining, fishing, and forestry. So everything has shifted from what it used to be to what it is now, and it's overturning society. He makes the argument with this statement that it ultimately creates an unstable society.
Yeah.
All postmodern, post-industrial societies are organized today in this way. And it's a degree of specialization that we have going on has never been tested before. We saw this during COVID, by the way. When COVID sent me home and sent a bunch of people home and said, these people are no longer essential workers and none of us had any skills other than what we've been specialized to do. That creates a massive problem, by the way. I don't know.
Well, you did.
Well, I had to go out and learn these skills. One more thing. Since I went and got Rory Groves, I went and got Man of the House by C.R. Wiley. And this is published by resource publications, I guess. And I want to find that one. There's one little quote in here. I know when you hear it, you're going to remember it too, but...
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Not exactly. Where is that at? Here we go. So in C.R. Wiley's book, in a section, no surprise, called Household Economy and Specialization, what we were literally just talking about, he quotes a guy named Robert Heinlein, I'm not sure. This is excellent. But this is a quote that I've used before, and I'm probably going to use again for the rest of my life. Quote, "A human being should be able to change a diaper, plan an invasion, butcher a hog, con a ship, design a building, write a sonnet, balance accounts, build a wall, set a bone, comfort the dying, take orders, give orders, cooperate, act alone, solve equations, analyze a new problem, pitch manure, program a computer, cook a tasty meal, fight efficiently, die gallantly. Specialization is for insects." End quote. I think that hits on everything we're talking about here. When we brought up this Industrial Revolution, it's so multifaceted in that it destroys the family. It rewrites the meaning and definition of work. It changes it all completely. And then it sends us down this path of specialization. Like, hey, you need to go to school for just this one subject. And that's never how mankind was meant to be. And that's never how mankind operated for however long you want to age the earth at, but 8,000, 9,000 years, man didn't operate in this specialization, but now we do. So you brought up that great point, all from the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Anything else on your little overview?
I don't think so. I think about time to...
Yeah, we'll wrap it up. So where does this leave us today? All right, so we got ongoing decline of self-sufficient family economies. And
heck yeah, that's huge.
Yes, what's the way back? We don't necessarily cover the positive here. We're pointing out the negative aspects of the Industrial Revolution, but we've got to think through the way to undo this, to get back to the family and get back to the home. And whether that means taking jobs where you're working from the home and you're there with your wife and kids, or whether that means that you now are working more on a more family economy, whatever these means may be, that's the way back. That's the path forward. What else we got? Homesteading, the Christian third way. There are alternatives here to think through. Key tension. I like this question. Should Christians embrace patches like the family wage? We didn't get into that, but if you go and read Carlson's book, you'll see that the government, even under Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt had a bunch to say about these topics we're talking about, and then Franklin tries to come up with the family wage, or what they said would ultimately leads to a minimum wage. But the family wage would be the minimum amount that a family needs in order to live a decent lifestyle. And you can go take a look at that. But should Christians embrace these patches like the family wage, or should they push for deeper economic renewal rooted in household production and autonomy? I think it's the latter. I think all these band-aids that we would use government solutions to do, they're the wrong way. You got to go back and you got to rebuild this from the start. So there's the Industrial Revolution. I can't overstate it enough, but the damage that it did to the family and to the household. Were there positives? Yes. And people are going to argue and say, well, we wouldn't have had the airplane. We wouldn't have the engine and transportation and the medical advancements. Fine. We traded freedom for all of those things. We did. What else you got? We're done. But wrap this up?
Yep.
Okay, the next episode, we're going to jump into government-run education, compulsory education, mandatory schooling, and we already talked about how it builds and flows out of the Industrial Revolution. Okay, we'll close this out.
Yep.
What you got?
Thank you for watching the Family Pulpit Podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe, and do some comments, and make sure to go check out our channels on all kinds of stuff. We got Apple Podcast channel, we've got Spotify, stuff like that.
YouTube?
YouTube. Yeah, I'd probably watch it on this. On YouTube, I mean.
Yeah. Check out the...
And we also have a...
Notes from the Pulpit.
Yeah, check out the Notes from the Pulpit. We have a website, kind of our website, but mostly Dad's website. It's called voiceoftruthblog.com. You can go check that out. Got some useful blogs there. And then we have a Voice of Truth blog Facebook page.
I think that might be Speaking the Truth.
Speaking the Truth and Love, yeah.
What else you got?
That's all.
We're out?
Yep.
All right. Catch you on the next one.
Peace.